painting of Tiana on one nail and Naveen on the other, and then it's just this really pretty, very soft holographic background across the rest, and there's a little bit of a repeating pattern on the thumb. It is so cute. All the products I'm using are from Madam Glam, and I will put all those color names in the description box below. All the background colors are from the new February collection, and then I also want to share with you that I have a discount code for the Madam Glam Academy. It's 15% off, and I'll put that down below as well as a link that will take you right there. So if you've ever been interested in taking any of the classes that they have available, this will give you just a little bit of a discount. So don't forget to check out that, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!
Okay, so we're going to start out with Not Your Boo and Bubble Bath. Not Your Boo is a slightly darker one, and Bubble Bath is slightly lighter. So we're going to put, so on the outside of the middle finger, so towards like your index finger, start out darker, and then go lighter. And then on your ring finger, do the opposite. So do lighter towards your middle finger and darker on the outside. So they're lighter towards each other and they darken towards the edges. It'll give them sort of a inner light sort of a look. It's very subtle. The colors are very similar, but if you do it just looks like a nice little glow from between the two characters. So we've got those two colors again. Blend them together with the Madam Glam ombre brush. It doesn't take too much. These colors blend together. Anything with a little bit of glitter or shimmer is going to ombre easier than a color that is completely a cream color. Now we're going to be taking some brown shades of gel polish, and these are all from Madam Glam, and I can put links to all of them in the description box below as far as which colors it was that I used. And we're going to just paint a base for Tiana's face. So start out with just a generic face shape for her. Make sure you're using high quality reference photos that don't look blurry or fuzzy at all. You want ones that have a really crisp, high resolution to them. And then continue and do her shoulder. And then after you have that done, you're going to want to fully cure it. A lot of these steps I'm just flash curing in between, but that first layer you really want to make sure it cures completely, especially since it is a darker color and they sometimes tend to take slightly longer to cure than a pastel color. Then we're going to mix a couple shades together just to get a slightly lighter version of our first color. And we're going to begin finding things like her forehead, her nose, her cheekbones, her chin. Just do those little bits of highlighting to start out with. You don't want to overdo it and go crazy. You want to just slowly build in the transitions. Once you have those spaces found, go ahead and just sort of tap them out so that the transition softens, so it's not such a harsh line. When you're doing this, do not worry if your lines are a little bit fuzzy, if you can see the little paint strokes and it doesn't look perfectly smooth. It's one of those things that in the beginning, it's almost inevitable that you're going to have those little marks. As you progress and as you add more and more layers and more depth and more colors, they will slowly begin to fade. So don't over stress about it. They'll kind of come and go. I went back to my original color and I added more to the areas that I want to remain dark just to kind of smooth them out. I'm going to do a flash cure. And now I'm going to take a color called Razzles Pink, which is a very bright pink, and I'm going to be adding some highlights in her cheeks. This is one of the biggest tips I'm going to give you in this video if you like to paint portraits. If you are highlighting, or I guess blushing, somebody with a darker complexion, do not use a creamy pale pink. You're going to want to use a pink that is actually very bright and intense in color. Something like a neon color is what you want to go for, and a darker neon color. Use one that doesn't have like a white creamy base. If you look at your gel polishes, sometimes it's hard to tell if they have a white creamy base, but if you paint a thin layer of them over something clear, like a nail, a color swatch card, if it's a clear one, if you do it and it's got a clear base, it should just have sort of a smooth, almost transparent look, like you'll be able to see through it and doesn't have this cloudy look. If it has that cloudy look and you paint it over a dark brown or a medium brown or any kind of, darker flesh tone, it's going to end up making the person look really kind of pale and ghostly. You don't want that to happen. So for her, I use the color Razzles Pink, which is from Madam Glam, and it is one of the best colors for applying a blush type color tone to any sort of a darker skin tone. Even a lighter skin tone, you just have to go really easy on it. It's just one of those things that it's just so important because you don't want to make their cheekbones look unhealthy, which is basically what happens when you use a lighter tone. You want them to look really warm and really, healthy. Healthy is kind of the goal. So now after we have her face, very well started, I did use a slightly lighter color yet to add some more highlights to her. Then I'm going to go through with black gel paint and I'm going to be adding her hair and a couple of those adorable little curls that fall down her face. That's one of my favorite things. I love it when Melody's hair does that too. And she has a couple little curls that fall down her forehead. I think they're so adorable. And then we're going to take that black gel paint and we're going to start filling in some of her facial features. You don't need to over outline her nose, just do a little bit like around her nasal folds and her nostrils, and then you're going to be doing outlines for her eyes and her eyebrows, and then when you get there you're also going to outline her mouth. This part is totally optional. I also did some very, very thin little outlines around her face, just sort of here and there in her neck and her shoulder. The outlines are so thin that you basically don't see them unless you're looking for them. If in your personal journey with tiny paintings, if you don't feel like you can paint a line that thin and precise, skip it. It's not that important. And it's one of those that if it ends up looking too thick, it's going to just sort of take over and it's going to make the design look very chunky, I guess. But if you can get them to be that thin and delicate, as you can see I'm doing right here, then absolutely go for it. It actually, on this particular character, I think it really defines the whole thing. The Princess and the Frog is a new enough movie that they don't have those, outlines like they do with older ones like Cinderella, Snow White, and Sleeping Beauty. However, every once in a while, I'm just an outline favoring person, and so I like to add them. One other thing that Tiana has is she has these little dimples in her cheeks, so don't forget to add those. And then I'm going to be painting her smile and her mouth. I actually painted in her lips entirely with black, and then I highlighted them with a shimmery red color called Smart Oxblood, which is one of my favorite colors of all time from Madam Glam. And so if you don't have a color that you want to highlight with, the Smart Oxblood color or any sort of rich shimmery red, you could start them out with a red color that you like, especially if you don't have one that is super pigmented, because it'll give you that same rich red color. But I just really like having a gel paint base under some of those really precise little details, just so that they look crisp and they don't fan out or bleed out a little bit, which gel polish occasionally tends to do. I'm going to add her a little bit of eyeshadow with a color, it's called Vida Loca. And then with white gel paint, I'm going to be filling in her teeth and her eyes. So when you're filling in her eyes and her teeth, it's going to look very shocking because you're using bright white gel paint. If you don't want to use bright white gel paint, if that's not a color you have, or if, it just seems really shocking, the other option you could do would be use a very soft gray. I know one that Madam Glam has that would be the type of gray that I would suggest using is called cashmere gray. But we are going to be shading in her eyes and her teeth. So as long as you can, wait or you plan to shade them in, don't worry about the brightness of the white because it'll cover itself up in a second. I'm also going to use that bright white to add her little crown and to add her necklace. So the style of outfit that I'm doing for Tiana is where she is dressed up as a princess for the masquerade party, not where she's actually a princess later on when she marries Naveen. So it's actually an outfit that I think is gorgeous. It's where she's got on that really pretty blue evening gown and the little shimmery blue crown, and just goes perfectly with those background colors from the new Madam Glam collection. So we're going to be filling in a little bit of a grayscale on her eyes and her mouth. Mix a little bit of white gel paint into your black gel paint. The tiniest bit of black gel paint is all you need. Add a little bit of that color just to shade in those teeth and eyes. Flash cure it again. And then you can go back through and touch up any of the black lines that need it after you did any of that filling in. You can always go back and forth and fix things as you go. I would highly recommend keeping that in your back pocket, which is another great reason to use gel paint because it's really pigmented and it will cover anything. So you don't have to worry about, fixing everything later. The same color I used for her eyeshadow, that Vida Loca, which is a really pretty plum purple, I'm going to be using to add some highlights to her hair. If you wanted to use a different color than purple for her hair, I would recommend a blue tone. I would not recommend using gray for her hair. It doesn't look as lush and healthy. If you do want to use a color that's not quite as colorful as blue or purple to highlight her hair, I would go in with a chocolate brown. But really, I would recommend using either blue or purple. Go through and add more shading as you see fit. Like I've said a bunch of times before, keep working on things until you're happy with them. Once you're happy with it and you look at it and you're like, you know what? That looks pretty darn good. Then put your paintbrush down and stop, because 9 times out of 10, once you're happy with a painting and you keep working on it anyways, you end up regretting it. It's just one of those facts of life that I have come to learn repeatedly and still haven't quite learned yet sometimes. Then I'm going to take a little bit of a orangier tone brown. I'm going to be adding the colors of her pupils, and then here I'm adding that Smart Oxblood over her lips. That color does not pick up very well on the camera, but it looks so rich in person. I'm going to be adding just a little bit of shading on her eyes as far as just like on the irises, just to really make them look so alive. Flash cure that. Before you add the pupils, make sure that you've done any of that highlighting in her eyes. If you want to take it one step further, you could add just a hint, the smallest hint possible, of a gold tone in her eyes would look really pretty. I knew I was going to apply matte top coat over this, and that doesn't necessarily lend itself 100% to a shimmer color, so I did not do that. But if you were planning on applying a glossy top coat over Tiana, just the tiniest little bit of gold in her eyes would be beautiful. I'm going to go back through with the color Bubble Bath, which is one of my background colors, the lighter one, and I'm going to add that blue shimmer, over the crown and over the necklace. With the white in the background, it makes it look so much brighter. A tiny white highlight in her eyes, and then any other places you think you need to add outlines, I'm going to go through and do that now. Mainly her crown, just to separate out those different pieces of the little interlocking triangles on the crown. A couple little lines, make sure the one that's in front looks like it's in front. Same thing with the necklace. And then we can start working on our Naveen. So I'm going to begin with the color Jenna, which is such a really bright, it's like the perfect spring green color. And I'm going to paint his face. When you're painting Naveen, he's a little out of proportion for size compared to what Tiana is on my particular nail set, just because if he were, in proportion frog to human, he would be so tiny I'd have to skip out on those details. So try to paint him as small as you can without having to forfeit the details. And it depends on the person. If you have longer nails, bigger nails, and you could paint Tiana's face larger, then you could keep Naveen the same size that I did and it still have a little bit better proportions. It is up to you. Once you have that first base layer of Jenna down, I actually did 2 coats of it just to make sure it was completely solid. Then I'm going to go through with black gel paint and just start filling in all of those outlines. I really outlined Naveen just because he has so many tiny little details in him that if I did not do a crisp outline, you really wouldn't see them. And plus, because of all those tiny little details, it'd be very hard to start shading him in without knowing where all of his hands are, his legs are, the lighter area on his belly. It's just a lot easier to have all of those details drawn in first. So I'm just going to go through and add them as thin of lines as possible, just like I said for doing Tiana's outlines. You don't want them to look overdone or chunky, sort of like eyeliner. Although sometimes there's, a time and a place for really thick, bold eyeliner. A lot of times, just for a natural look, you want to do very thin, delicate eyeliner. Same concept for your character outlining. So now we're going to go through and add his mouth. And then we pretty much just have his little nose and his eyes left. We're doing pretty good. So then when you're going to go through and you're going to do his eyes, one eye is sort of more prominent than the other. You'll find that with just the way the eyebrow is positioned, it kind of comes down. That gives a little bit of direction to his face. That's the little line for his nose. I'm going to be adding in his eyes. He has very sort of sunken in eyes, contrary to what I always think of as a frog. Their eyes are always so prominent on the top of their head, but he's got sort of that suave, debonair, dark look to him. So we've got to put his eyes just a little bit further set into his face. It also humanizes him a little bit. Add a little bit more outlining to his teeth area. And then I'm going to take the color Pistachio mixed with some white gel paint, which makes this beautiful kind of creamy, almost like avocado salad dressing. That's what it reminds me of. And we're going to be adding some little highlights to him. And then after you have those couple little highlights done with that mix, you're going to want to add more white to your little combination. So that's even a brighter shade. So after you have your highlights done, take more white, mix it into your pistachio, and you're going to get a much brighter creamy color. And that's what you're going to do the area from below his smile and down his belly, is with this even lighter color. And by mixing that white gel paint in, you're going to end up with a much more concentrated pigment, because gel paint has more pigment in it than gel polish does. So by using that particular combination, you're going to get crisper lines and it's going to turn out so precise. You can use that brighter color combination to add even further highlights on him here and there. You can just add, a little streak here and there to brighten things up. And then going through with the white gel paint, we're going to be adding in his teeth and his eyes, much like Tiana. And if you guys hear any funky little noises in the background, things knocking around or purring, I am currently joined by my 2 cats, and they are both very intrigued by this process. So there, we're going to fill in his eyes. And then I'm going to take a little bit of black and add some more details to his teeth, separating his upper teeth from his lower teeth. And then after you have those done, fix any black lines that you need to, that you might have painted over in the process of adding his different highlights. And then using the color Lonely Boy, which is a not super opaque, but a lovely dark green, we're going to be adding some shading. So that's actually a beautiful color for shading just because it isn't incredibly opaque. And so you can add these nice gradients and soft shadows without having it, not having to blend out too much. It just kind of does the work for you. So that one works really well for shading, and it's one I come back to time and time again for that reason. Go through and add all of his shading. Like I said, he's got dark set eyes, so you want to add a nice little shadow over his eyes on his eyelids, a little bit on his belly, his legs, his arms, anywhere that you might need to add a little shading. It's, again, so crucial to have a really crisp, clear, high definition reference photo for finding these highlights and shadows, among other things. It's just really nice to have that reference to go back to. I'm going to add a touch of the color Pink About You on his gums. And then after that's done, a little bit of brown for his pupils or his irises, cure that. And then the tiniest little bit of black for the pupils, really tiny. Like I said, he's so small painted on this nail. Go through and add every last little detail you feel like you need to. And then we're going to move on to the next nails. For the rest, the thumb, index, and pinky nails, we're going to start out with the color Peppermint Kiss. Such a pretty light green. And then after I have 2 coats of that, I'm going to take the color The Wish, which is a slightly more aqua tone, and we're going to be adding a little bit of a shadow along the cuticle. Very subtle, and honestly, I don't even see it. I know it's there, and I think if in the right light you'd see it, but the colors are so similar that it's almost impossible to see that difference, and anybody looking at this set that didn't know would never know it. Then I'm going to take a combination of blue gel paint and black gel paint, again, using gel paint for the precision of the lines that you can achieve. We're going to be adding just a little bit of a pattern. So every once in a while on different Tiana things, you see where she has this like interlocking pattern on her dress at the very end of the movie when she gets the princess dress after she marries Naveen. And it's got a crown mixed in, it's got frogs mixed in, it has a lot of lily pads sort of interlocked, and then it's a lace, so it's got the little strands of thread connecting everything together with lace. And that's what I was trying to replicate. And I had a horrible time trying to find a reference photo for that particular material, and it's one of those things where I know I have seen it, and so the fact I couldn't find a reference photo was driving me crazy. Eventually I did find one, and so I kind of adapted it to make it my own because it wasn't exactly what I had envisioned in my head. But we're going to do our little lily, and then I have a crown built in that's more of the style of her princess crown at the end when she's actually a princess. And there's our little lily pads. And however you want to do this, you certainly can. It was part of the vision in my head, and honestly, this nail isn't my favorite one of this set, but it was just so, I don't know, so important to the way I had planned this out and pictured it that I could not leave it out. And then once you have whatever images you're planning to paint in, just fill the lines in the background with quick little short strokes that are very thin, just to give it that kind of lacy base. And then apply a coat of no wipe top coat over that nail. And then over the rest of the nails, we're actually going to apply a little stripe of jewelry gel over the index and the pinky nails right in the corner, just sort of rubbing it right along the cuticle without touching the skin, obviously. And then after you have that applied, a nice thick coat, I want these rhinestones to last as long as possible, we're going to be applying a layer of gel top coat over the top. This is Glossy No Wipe Gel Top Coat, again, from Madam Glam. So there's the first coat over. So you don't cure the jewelry gel. You apply a thick layer of jewelry gel and then a nice layer of the No Wipe Gel Top Coat over the top. And then before you cure is when you're going to want to be pressing in those little rhinestones. The rhinestones I'm using are not the highest quality ones, but they look so pretty. And at first they started out with that beautiful iridescent blue. At this point, now that I've had these nails on for close to 2 weeks now, the iridescence has worn off and they're just black, but they still look really pretty. It's funny how that happens. It always cracks me up and always surprises me, especially since I'm getting used to using higher quality crystals instead of the rhinestones. And then when the color wears off, I'm just shocked. But once I have those crystals placed, I'm going to go through and I'm going to just put little caviar beads, silver caviar beads in between all of the rhinestones. Makes them look like they're set, like they're in a jewelry placement. They have the little prongs on them. It's my favorite way to use caviar beads. And I think it really elevates the look of the little row of rhinestones to have them. So place one in each of the spaces between, and then one on the end of your row of rhinestones. And that's it. Once that's been cured, then you just apply a layer of velvet matte top coat over your two characters, over Naveen and over Tiana. That is an optional step. One thing that I personally always try to do with my characters, just because especially for photographing them, they turn out so much better if they're matte. You can really see the detail. But like I said, that's mainly important if you're planning to photograph your nails. If photographing isn't, your main focus, then it's optional to apply the matte top coat or not. It's kind of a personal preference. Otherwise, I absolutely love this design. Like I've said, my daughter is really impressed by the Princess and the Frog. It's one of her favorites, and actually I'm pretty sure Tiana is my favorite of the Disney princesses as well. She cooks, and I absolutely love to cook, and just the whole doing things for yourself and working hard mantra has kind of always been my philosophy as well. So I hope you guys love this design as much as we do. And if you do decide to do a recreation, please don't forget to share it with me on Facebook or Instagram. And otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Bye.